Frameworks, The Price of Delusion, Chapter 1, Part 3. Present day, Arlington, Virginia. "Mr. Peppleton, how much longer?" asked the two-star general, while he sat fidgeting impatiently in the back seat of a specially equipped government limo. He had been on a tightly scheduled tour of several military centers. There had been a few stops, including the White House, where General Corsica had consulted with a group of congressmen and the Secretary of Defense on a very pressing matter. The driver glanced at his watch and remained quiet as he assessed his whereabouts. The general spoke up loudly. "Mr. Peppleton!" It looks like about 15 to 20 minutes, sir," shot back Sergeant George Peppleton. "Once we get off the main highway, we'll get on the direct access road to the Pentagon, sir." The sergeant had answered him cautiously, as the general was displaying a more grouchy tone about himself more than usual. Perhaps he's had a long day or didn't get enough sleep, thought George. It had been 3 years since Sergeant Peppleton began driving General Corsica around. It started out sporadically at first, but only within the last year did the sergeant receive more orders to drive the general until it was just about every day. He had not been officially assigned to the general, but was stationed at the Pentagon, primarily as a regular driver dispatched to whomever needed his services. Now, however, it seemed like he was becoming the general's personal chauffeur and assistant. Up to this point, he had enjoyed meeting a wide range of people there at the Pentagon. With the general becoming his steady and only passenger, it caused him to be more focused and remain on his toes with the constant demands and protocols that the general would continually set forth. This did not disturb the sergeant, as he had faced situations that were a lot tougher during his tours in Afghanistan, so this job was gravy for him. The sergeant knew that this job might lead even to a promotion down the line, so the seriousness and urgency he sensed in the general's tone only momentarily unsettled his emotions. General Corsica tapped his fingers as he looked out the window at the evening traffic. At 7:38 p.m. or 1938 hours military time, the evening ritual of cars going home was beginning to subside. As he looked outside at the passing buildings, he began to think on his wife and children. He reminisced about the previous weekend outing that he had spent with them at the Rock Creek Park in Washington, D.C. near Silver Spring. The smell of barbecue chicken cooking and the children playing nearby were all still very vivid in his mind. It had really been good to get away with them, he thought. Due to the mounting pressures in D.C. and other parts of the world, it was difficult to spend time with his family. As the general continued to replay and enjoy this memory, he recalled his specific feelings that he had as he watched his kids play with their dog named Bubbles. He remembered calling over to John, his oldest son at 13. "John, don't go too far. The food is almost ready and it's going to be pretty good." John called back, "Okay," as he threw the frisbee to Bubbles and then watched the dog leap into the air and grab it. The general's two daughters giggled incessantly as they saw Bubbles, their beautiful off-white cocker spaniel, come down, land on his side, roll over, and then still come up with the frisbee, smiling as if she was ready for another go at it. The general turned to his wife, Beth, who looked up and grinned at him as she was busily setting up the table. She was putting out all of her famous homemade fixings to complement the general's barbecue. The general kept savoring this memory until he was abruptly startled with a sudden stop by the driver, who had to brake hard for a person who was running a red light. "Watch it, Sergeant," jumped the general. "Sorry, sir. Civilian was running a light, sir," responded Peppleton. "Well, watch out anyway," added Corsica. "Yes, sir, will do, sir," said the sergeant as he exacted the proper amount of deference needed for the moment. "We are 2 to 3 minutes away, sir." "Good," replied the general while he studied his watch. As it was almost 8 p.m., the general began gathering and tidying himself for the secret meeting that was about to take place at the Pentagon. The military limo drove up to the gate, and the guard there came over to check the driver's ID and the orders. After a short period of browsing, he then moved back to the rear of the car. The general lowered his window, and the guard looked in. As the guard glanced at the general and the things in the car, he said, "Nice to see you again, sir." "Likewise," replied the general. The car guard retreated, the gate opened, and he gave the general a sharp and full salute. The general returned his salute as they drove on. "I like how that guard operates," commented General Corsica. "Peppleton, what's his name again?" "Lawton, sir. Corporal Lawton Muncie, Jr., sir," said Peppleton. He further added, "He's been with us for about 6 months now, sir." "Make a note of that and remind me to put in a good word for him about his thoroughness," ordered the general. "Right away, sir. Consider it done, sir," responded the sergeant. The limo pulled in and arrived at the stopping zone for dignitary drop-offs and came to a full stop. The sergeant quickly turned off the vehicle and hopped out of the front like he was about to win the lottery. He opened the door with military style, hopped to attention, and saluted. The general, with determination in his voice, got out and said, "Thank you, Sergeant, and please, get my bag." "Yes, sir, right away, sir," responded Peppleton as he quickly recovered the 2 bags. One was a carry-on for personal items, and the other one was his briefcase filled with important documents and his personal computer. It was now 8:20 p.m., and there appeared to be an unusual amount of activity going on in the Pentagon for that time of evening. There seemed to be a lot of movement and a bit of a hustle in the background as they entered the stone building that had a black military-style kind of flooring. There were rows of pictures lining the halls with cabinets and flags decorating the foyer for people to see as they came in. General Corsica picked up the pace, which made it difficult for Sergeant Peppleton to keep up, but he managed. That's what servicemen in the Army are trained to do, he thought. You just keep up with their officers and leaders. Peppleton knew that servicemen didn't always get the proper respect that they deserved. Despite that, many still chose to serve their country with honor and without fail. Since the 9/11 disaster at the World Trade Center, the respect had increased for them considerably. Even though the embarrassing and defamatory days of the Vietnam era had long been forgotten, Sergeant Peppleton remembered what his grandfather had told him about those soldiers who served in that war. He remembered his grandfather telling him about the many hurts that were residing deeply in the hearts of those forgotten vets back then. The specific memories of their being shouted at and spit upon as they arrived home had become the ultimate insult to them. Even though the Vietnam vets were well advanced in their years, they were still stuck in that time point in their minds. Sergeant Pepple thought, if only someone had shown them some appreciation for what they did. He suddenly shook himself back out of his momentary reverie. The two briskly turned the corner inside and entered a battery of elevators that would take them to the restricted levels deep underground. A fuzzy feeling of nausea entered Peppleton as he stabilized himself without being noticed. He didn't like the sensation that he got in the elevator as the floor was dropping out from under him. Slowly he braced himself for the final stop and steadied the general's baggage. Ding! Went the bell, and the door obediently opened. The two went out and quickly found the room where the general's meeting was being held. It was in room 3M-242.